What is up, guys? I've been requested many of times to give my opinion on all this ZhongLi drama, so in today's video we're going to be giving a short summary about everything that's been going on, as well as going over MiHoYo's official forum response regarding all this ruckus, my opinion if ZhongLi needs to be buffed, as well as my concerns for Genshin Impact and the future of its characters. So, without further ado, I hope you guys do enjoy this video. So for those that don't keep up with Genshin Impact drama, an extreme TLDR is basically that ZhongLi got released and he was not as strong as people expected, especially in the main DPS front, where his auto attacks is basically weaker than XiangLing, the only other 4-star polearm character in the game. From this table posted on Reddit by user Decoy134, you can see that ZhongLi's auto attacks at level 6 versus XiangLing's auto attacks level 6, ZhongLi is doing actually less damage modifier-wise compared to XiangLing. However, if you pair ZhongLi's higher base attack by being a 5-star as well as animation cancel, it's about roughly the same, but a 5-star character shouldn't have to do animation cancels as well as have higher stats just to do more damage than a 4-star. As a support, a lot of people feel that ZhongLi's shield is not strong enough on his elemental skill, as well as his petrification is not long enough, nor does his burst skill deal enough damage. All of this combined has caused the Genshin Impact community to cry out to MiHoYo for a buff to ZhongLi, as well as a lot of YouTubers making clickbait videos regarding ZhongLi and this drama. And on the Chinese side, the fan base has basically called MiHoYo unpatriotic for making a lot of the characters of Liyue, especially the Archon or the God of Liyue, so weak. You can see here on this Chinese poll, 90.49% of players do not like ZhongLi. The other characters here are Chi-Chi at 71.35% disliked. Then this is Keqing over here at 63.78. Then this one here is Child. Then this one here is Mona. And then you can see the characters that are pretty much liked are Diluc, Klee, Jean, and then Venti. Now for there to be drama, there needs to be people that argue the opposite side, that ZhongLi does not need a buff. And if you do a simple YouTube search of ZhongLi build, you'll see all these clickbait videos that go and say ZhongLi's the best support, ZhongLi's not bad, and all this other nonsense. And the reason why I like to call these sorts of videos nonsense is because a lot of build showcase videos or damage showcase videos like to bring characters in the overworld with potions or food, or into areas where they have increased modifiers such as floor 7 of Abyss, where they have increased crit damage multipliers, or something such as this, the Noblest Domain, where you do 75% increased geo damage, and then they'll often have things such as food, like Adeptus Temptation, which is increases your attack and crit rate, as well as your geo potion to do more geo damage, or various other buffs, and they often like to also bring like a crit damage helmet so they can do like a fat crit on it, but with a very lopsided crit rate to crit damage ratio, and just a lot of biased information. And even if it is being done in a fair perspective, such as higher tier Abyss or in the overworld with no food or uncommon buffs, then it's typically going to be done by a whale who has done max resin refreshes every day to have a ton of artifact choices, as well as some min-max being done. And yes, you could argue that it's just a matter of time before everyone reaches the same tier of artifacts and these builds still are viable. However, the average free-to-play or budget player will take a heck of a lot longer to get the same level of artifacts. And by the time they get the artifacts, these characters might be obsolete. But at the pace and pattern that MiHoYo is going, maybe none of these characters will ever be obsolete. Now that we got that summary out of the way, let's go look at MiHoYo's official response to the ZhongLi issue. This was posted on the forums under their official account. I'm just going to be giving a summary about each of the sections. If you do want to read the whole post yourself, I will be linking the post down in the description below. So in this first section, they basically state that they've been keeping a close eye on all the ZhongLi feedback, as well as they apologize greatly for such a late response. But in my opinion, if they were truly sorry, they would have given some sort of apology primo gems, as well as probably posted this on their main page under the news section. But under their latest news post, you don't see the ZhongLi response anywhere here. You do see the developers discussion for what's to come in 1.2 as their latest post, and under their forum post in the featured category, you don't really see the ZhongLi response here other than a ZhongLi mega thread, as well as a bunch of artwork being done. And in-game, you also don't see any notice about the response. You do see a notice about the C2 bug. And if you go look on their Twitter does have a post regarding the response. So to me, it kind of feels like it's a little bit swept under the rug, where they don't want to bring a whole lot of light to this ZhongLi drama and they just kind of want to deal with it on the side. Now back to the post. If you scroll down, you'll see down here that they say that they design every character to have a sort of unique experience and have mechanics so that the game can be fresh and exciting for everyone. And ZhongLi was designed to be a support character where he would shield people as well as control the enemies with his burst skill. I find this section a little bit funny because they designed a 1.2 character Ganyu to be pretty much very similar to how Amber, the 4-star free character that you get at the very start of the game. For elemental skills, Ganyu throws out an object that taunts enemies, Amber throws out an object that taunts enemies, Ganyu's object scales off her max HP, Amber's object scales off of her max HP. When the object expires or gets destroyed, it deals elemental damage to the targets around it. And what do you know, Amber's also does the exact same thing. Now they aren't exactly the same, as Ganyu's elemental skill does cause her to dash backwards when you use it, similar to how Diona dashes backwards when you use her elemental skill or when Mona holds down her elemental skill. Now when it comes to elemental burst skills, both characters will create a circular field that does continuous elemental damage. However, one of the biggest differences is that Ganyu does last 15 seconds and Amber only does last 2 seconds. But at its core, they both are circular burst skills that apply element. Ganyu also does have a huge different mechanic with having charged arrow mechanics, while Amber does not have that. But does that really make them that diverse? In the rest of that section, they state what his skills are meant to do, where his elemental skill is meant to create an effective absorption shield, which I do believe it does do, and his burst skill is to control groups of targets without the need of elemental reactions or equipment bonuses. Now, the thing that I find funny about this section is they basically say that they have collected all the game data to find that players that do use ZhongLi have increased their survivability. And to me, that's really funny because of course you're going to survive more if you put somebody that gives you shields or CCs or that can heal your team. Imagine if you put somebody that was a healer or a shielder on your team and you died more. In this next section, they basically respond to all the people that complain about his damage being low by stating that he's not meant for damage. He's meant to be built with HP to increase your survivability and create stable protection for yourself. This next bit states that they take a lot of time and consideration into planning out their characters of their roles in each aspect of the game, and in future versions of the game as well as future characters, they'll be making the characters that you love have special roles and niche moments where they'll be useful. This may be cynical of me, but this kind of just sounds like that they're just trying to cover their cheeks for future characters where their characters won't be as great all around, but they'll be good in certain moments, certain roles, certain niches. This last bit is just acknowledging a bug and that they'll be fixing this bug with ZhongLi's Constellation 2 and that they will continue to monitor the gameplay experience as well as their feedback on the game. If this post was a little bit too long and confusing for you, basically TLDR, they're not going to be changing anything, they're not buffing anybody, the character's working as intended, and all characters in the future will be working as intended as well. And now for my opinion on ZhongLi. But before we begin, I would like to state that I do have a level 90 ZhongLi with max level talents, and I have used him in the Abyss, and I have beaten floor 12 of the Abyss as well. Do I think ZhongLi needs a buff? No. Do I think ZhongLi is a good character? No. I think ZhongLi is the worst 5-star character along with Qiqi, where Qiqi is a good character, but she just heals too much. In the state of the game that we currently have, we don't need that much healing. She is great in the co-op sense, but in the single player sense, both characters are not that great. And for the people that like to defend ZhongLi and say that you don't need to run a healer if you run ZhongLi because the shields are so strong, even in the Abyss, I like to go and say that a healer is a lot cheaper to build up as well as obtain compared to ZhongLi. And for those that like to go and say ZhongLi not only takes the healer slot but also brings damage to the table, there's a lot of other healers that do the exact same thing, where Jean heals and does damage with her elemental skill and her swirl reactions. Bennett with his ultimate to give attack, as well as his pyro style and his elemental skill. Xingqiu, who applies hydro at a high rate and deals good damage with his elemental burst skill. Barbara even buffs 15% hydro damage if you have Constellation 2, which a lot of players do have because they gave out so many free Barbaras. Diona can apply cryo for some cryo reactions as well. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't use ZhongLi if you already have him, or that you shouldn't pull for him if you like his character and his design, but you should at least stop telling people that he's a good character or that he's a great character, or even that he's diverse or unique and that he does something that other characters can't do. And now I kind of want to elaborate a little bit as to why I said that ZhongLi does not need a buff, but at the same time he's not a good character. But before we begin that, I want to show you guys what ZhongLi was like during Pioneer testing before all of his nerfs came out before release. This is what ZhongLi's Elemental Burst skill does now, where Petrification causes opponents affected by Petrification to not be able to move. In 1.1 Pioneer testing, Petrification used to be that enemies affected by Petrification status cannot move and take 20% additional physical and geo damage. If ZhongLi really was designed to be a support character, I don't really understand why they would take off this effect off of Petrify, because this seems really like a good support utility for a lot of different teams. If you also did not know, the ZhongLi in 1.1 Pioneer testing also had 2 seconds longer on his Petrify for his Elemental Burst skill. So instead of having a 4-second max duration at like talent level 10, you had a duration of 6 seconds. Now, if you paired 6 seconds at Constellation 0 with increased damage when they're petrified, that does seem a little bit imbalanced, but if you nerfed his duration to 4 seconds or 3.6 seconds at Constellation 0 and gave him the increased damage boost, that would have been fine. Or you could have done the other aspect of taking away the damage boost and giving him back his old duration. And you can't really say that 6 seconds is broken because of the fact that his Constellation 4 gives him 2 seconds longer. Venti, the other Archon in the game, has a Elemental Burst skill that lasts 8 seconds of CC duration, although this is mainly for just small monsters and not really big monsters, which ZhongLi could also do, but ZhongLi can't petrify bosses. And from all this, it may sound like I want ZhongLi to be reverted back to his pre-nerf state, which is kind of like a buff, but I'm honestly fine with how he is. It's more of an issue with how MiHoYo is designing these newer characters to be kind of locked behind Constellations to show their true selves, as well as a big problem with the Geo element, where any Geo character that comes out will always feel mediocre or pointless or useless or whatever you guys want to call it. And what I mean by characters being locked behind Constellations, you'll see that ZhongLi kind of feels more so of a real character after he gets Constellations, where his first Constellation gives him a second Stone Steal, so he could be used alone rather than with other Geo characters. His Constellation 4 gives him 2 extra seconds, increases his AoE size, as well as the ability to heal with his Burst skill, and his second Constellation giving him an extra shield. Now, if you look at Child, the character that was released before ZhongLi, you can see his Constellation 1 reduces his cooldown on his Elemental skill, which is a big problem, and he generates energy on his Constellation 2. His Constellation 4 allows for passive proccing of his Riptides, and then his Constellation 6 resets his cooldown on his Elemental skill whenever he uses Burst skill. And if you want to look at future characters, this is the Constellations of Ganyu, who is a character in the 1.2 update, where you can see here under Constellation 6, using Trail of Qilin causes the next Frostflake arrow shot within 30 seconds to not require charging. Ganyu may possibly be very good DPS because of her charged arrow mechanics, but she will undergo the same circumstance as Child did, where Child wants to really be at C6 to show his true potential of damage, and same thing will happen with Ganyu, where you'll want C6 so that you don't have to spend time charging up as many arrows as a lot of players would be, because charging arrows takes a lot of time, and if you do end up missing an arrow while charging it up, that cuts your DPS down greatly. Even her Constellation 4 adds a new mechanic to her Elemental Burst skill, where people inside her Elemental Burst skill will take more damage. Otherwise, if you didn't have this Constellation, they'd just be getting cryo and taking damage. Albedo does seem to be a little bit different, where he doesn't really seem like he has mechanics locked behind Constellations, and it's just mostly damage increases, although Constellation 2 does give him a slight mechanic change. Now, the reason why I bring all these Constellations up is because if you look at the original 5-star characters of Diluc, Mona, Jean, Chi-Chi, and Keqing, you can see here that their Constellations don't really add mechanics. They kind of just add more damage, more attack speed, reduce damage taken, or various other things. And even if you go over to Venti, you'll see that nothing really gets added by him. He does gain an extra arrow, but the arrow damage is kind of nerfed, as well as he doesn't really use arrows. He's more of a support character instead of a main DPS, where you'd never really use his triple shot arrow. And when you look at Klee, it does kind of cross that border by giving her kind of like a new attack on her Constellation 1. However, this doesn't occur that often and isn't really a huge damage boost. And if you look at her Constellation 4, she does have the ability to explode her burst skill when she swaps out. But if you were to make Klee in this day and age, I feel like this would have allowed her to be able to swap off and keep her elemental burst skill up at Constellation 4. And if you did not know, MiHoYo didn't expect their game to be so big, so my theory is that they designed these original characters to be as they are, but as they figured out the kind of goldmine they had on their hands, they just started to design characters to be more so locked behind Constellations, so more people would want to spend more money to get this amazing, glorious sort of character. Now, this sort of theory may be wrong, and this might be how they were designing the characters in their heads from the get-go, but MiHoYo really should stop locking characters behind Constellations, because newer characters should be better, or at least feeling as strong as the original characters, because right now, the original characters see a lot more playtime than the newer characters do. You can see that from that Chinese poll, where a lot of players were kind of saying that a lot of these new characters suck, and a lot of the older characters were a lot better. And now on to another topic about what needs to be changed in the game to make Geo characters a lot better, to not feel as underwhelming as they are. This infographic is made by Sunmilk or Sunmulk. You can find her on Twitter and Twitch. But you'll see here under the Geo elemental reaction, it is crystallized, which generates shields every time you interact the Geo element with another element. Having a shield is great and all, but having a Geo character apply the Geo element over and over again to crystallize multiple times has no real purpose, because it may create a bunch of shields on the floor, but if you pick up all those shields, they're just going to all stack with each other and take damage all at the same time, whether it's a crystallized shield on top of another crystallized shield, or it's a crystallized shield with another shield from a character's effect or weapon's effect. The elemental reaction of Cryo plus Electro also kind of suffers from the same issue, where if you apply Superconduct over and over again, it kind of has no real purpose, because the damage from Superconduct is kind of low, as well as if you do the Fizz Res down over and over again, all it does is it resets their duration. So how do you fix this issue for Geo to make them better? It's kind of simple, to be honest. All you have to do is make it so that crystallized shields, when you stack them on top of each other, it increases their damage absorption appropriately. So if one crystallized shield gives you 400 damage absorption, then 2 crystallized shields should give you 800, and so on and so on. And so you should also make it so that instead of extending the duration, it should just reset the duration, so that as long as you continue to pick up crystallized shields, you'll be tankier and tankier and tankier. You could possibly balance this by making it 50% less effective or something of that sort, because at some point somebody's going to be an unkillable object with enough crystallized reactions. Another way you can fix the crystallized reaction is by doing something similar to the 4-piece Archaic Petra set, where when you receive an elemental shard from a crystallized reaction, all party members gain a 35% damage bonus for that particular element. Instead, for crystallized, you could definitely do something where a person that picks up an elemental shard gains damage equivalent to that element up to like 10 to 20%, whatever is more similar to the damage dealt by Overload, Electrocharge, Melt, Vaporize, etc., etc. So to summarize it all, basically people are saying ZhongLi is underwhelming and he needs buff, while other people are saying that he's insane because you don't need to have a healer. I personally just think that he's okay, but he does not need a buff. It would be nice to have him back to his pre-nerf state, but it's totally understandable that they don't do that. But what MiHoYo does need to do is they need to stop blocking characters behind Constellation, as well as they need to give a severe buff to the Geo element as well as other elements, because Pyro is honestly king right now because of their elemental reactions, as well as their use in the endgame content currently. MiHoYo's post basically just felt like a lot of hogwash to just justify everything they've been doing and to give reason as to why they don't need to buff a character at all. But they clearly feel it's okay to nerf characters, because Childe and ZhongLi were both severely nerfed before release. And now that's not to say that characters won't be buffed before release, because ZhongLi was slightly buffed with his passive Ascension talent being increased from 20% to 33%, as well as Diluc did receive a buff from closed beta 3 into open beta testing, a severe buff at that, where his elemental burst skill was reduced from 60 to 40 cost, and that his elemental burst skill also imbued him with the pyro element. But from the post, it's very unlikely that MiHoYo will ever buff a character after they've released the character. At the end of the day, this is a PvE game, so if you like ZhongLi, go ahead and pull for him and play him, but don't expect him to be one of the greatest characters ever, as well as every other character that you enjoy in the game. That's going to be all for this video. This video did take longer than I expected to, so please do consider leaving a like, comment down below your opinion on all these topics, subscribe for more Genshin related content, join our Discord to be part of our Genshin Impact community, follow me on Twitch to get some live tips and discussions, follow me on my socials such as Twitter and Instagram to get quick short updates on the game. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.